Thank you for tuning in to this message from 1 Samuel 17. We appreciate all the support that we've gotten to the church. You guys have been amazing, truly. And if you'd like to support the church financially, you can send a check to 1981 State Route 45 North, Rock Creek, Ohio, 44084. You can also just go to online banking and just make a charitable contribution to the church at the same address. But you guys have supported us, and we super appreciate it. Appreciate, as always, all the words of encouragement that come in and the contacts we're able to make. Certainly our church congregation is in our prayers, and something you guys, we're thinking about you all the time. We know we're back to in-person services now. So 10:30 in the morning, you can come in person. You can be in the parking lot at 10:30 listening to 92.5. You can listen online, listen to a sermon like this, whatever's best for you. You know what your risk level is and who's around you. Do you have elderly parents living with you, so on and so on. I know there's a lot of factors for you, so you get the opportunity just to make a choice. And then whether it's 5:31 or June 7th, we'll probably add another service, so we'll be at 8:30, a little bit different time. But we've got all that coming up. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So if you just happen to be listening, don't catch the other announcements to know that that's going on. It's interesting. I've talked to a lot of people. Some people are just still finding out that, wow, you guys have started back to church and in-person services. Yes, a couple weeks now. And it's going well. It's going great. I mean, God is moving. It's fantastic. So we really appreciate it. I'm going to open up in prayer, and then I'll get started. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for those who are tuning in. I want to pray a special prayer of blessing over them. And whoever's listening, I pray that you be speaking directly to their hearts. It's not about me and what I'm saying, Lord. It's about what you've got to say. And so I just ask that it would be powerful today and that you give me the energy and the strength to clearly convey your word. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Now, Mark this last week told me an interesting story about an NPR broadcast that he heard. And they were interviewing some that were in prison because they were afraid of coronavirus. And if I was in prison, I would imagine that I would be fearful of the same thing. And one man said, I didn't come to prison for this. And it really begs the question, well, tell me, what did you come to prison for? As if you intentionally came here. Was it the view? Was it the cleaning service? Was it the cooking? Was it the hiking trails? Some things you face, come on, let's be honest. We're not here because we choose to be. We're not here in a time in a pandemic because we chose to be in the pandemic. We can't say, well, I didn't sign up for this. We never had a choice about it in the first place. They're just giants that we face. And so David comes and he sees his brothers, and his dad sends him to check on his brother's welfare. They're all in Saul's army. And you got the Philistines on one hill and the Israelis on another. And you got this big old giant named Goliath down in the middle that David hears him defy God. And that stirs his heart because he's going to do something about it. And our challenge today is to be bold in your faith, because the boldness of David's faith is absolutely stunning. And it's in contrast to Saul, who's clearly failing as Israel's leader. He has the fear of circumstances. He has the fear of people. He's made colossal mistakes because he's allowed fear to drive him more than he has faith. Yet he's a head taller than anyone else. He's a big man. He's an impressive man. He's the kind of leader that all the people wanted, because he's a good-looking guy, Saul is, and he's big and strong. And then you got David, who's not nearly as big as Saul is. He doesn't have that kind of height or stature. But the one thing that David has is phenomenal faith. And that's the difference maker, because it's not about the size of the person that makes the difference. It's the size of their faith that really makes the difference. So against all odds, he's going to step in there and fight for Israel when no one else will. So I love this sermon. I love this story. It's such a classic, and there's a reason why it's so beloved, because there are a lot of lessons that we can learn about life from David going out and facing that giant, because we've got giants of our own. And we find the first thing I want to talk about is faith faces giants. Faith faces gigantic problems. Sometimes my giant is a problem that I have. And let's look at this Philistine in 1 Samuel 17, starting in verse 4. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came out of the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor of bronze weighing 5,000 shekels. On his legs he wore bronze greaves, and a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron point weighed 600 shekels. His shield bearer went on ahead of him. So here's a man that's, now catch this, he's over 9 feet tall. The armor that he is wearing is 125 pounds worth. The spear point and his spear shaft as wide as a weaver's rod. Now, I'm not a weaver, so I don't really know how wide the rod is, but I'd have to imagine it's pretty substantial since they do make reference to it. It's got a 15-pound spearhead on it. I mean, can you imagine chucking a spear that's got a 15-pound weight on the end of it? I mean, this man's strength is phenomenal. So the problem, man, it's a monster. This problem is down there chanting and defying the armies of Israel, defying God. So the problem is huge, enormous. And I know that's not even a word, but I'm throwing it out there anyway. It's a huge, enormous problem. And the answer when we encounter big problems is not to pretend the problems don't exist. It's not about, like, hey, here's the secret to handling a guy who's over 9 feet tall, who's super strong, he's a champion, he's an experienced fighter. And we'll just say he's not. We'll just pretend, well, he's not really that big. He just looks big from here. No, he's a monster. And then you might as well admit it, because we don't get anywhere by being dismissive. Christianity doesn't have to be pie in the sky. We don't have to strengthen our faith by ignoring the size of the problem. Your faith is going to be strengthened by acknowledging, no, the problem's pretty big, but so is God. And so I'm going to trust God to help me. So we don't ignore giants, we deal with them. So what giants are you facing right now? What's menacing you in your thoughts? What's waking you up at night? It could be the desperate calls you're getting from your friends. It could be people are fearful. There's job loss. There's financial shortages. We could say we have problems. Coronavirus is a problem. There's health problems. There's economic problems. There's all kinds of things that are going on that we have to face. But what I find is this, that every problem has a solution. I've told my kids that so many times. Just remember, every problem you face has a solution. And so we look for that, and the solution is God. The solution is God's power. It's coming to Him, and it's looking to Him and knowing that we're going to be okay. So faith is going to face gigantic problems. Faith faces gigantic noises of hard times. In 10 and 11, then the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and we'll fight each other." On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. He's boisterous. He's taunting them. He's calling out. He's letting them know that he's there. He is defying, which literally means scorning, just taunting. You can't take me. Putting these negative thoughts into their heads. He's crying out down there. And oftentimes what I find is this, problems are loud. Problems and the voices of our problems are often louder than any other voice there is. They scream out and taunt us. They echo deep in the caverns of our soul. They create fear. Things like this. You might lose your job. You might not have a job come fall. You're going to get coronavirus. Your elderly parents are going to get coronavirus. You're not going to make it. The stock markets are failing. You're not going to be able to retire. Your kid's not going to wind up as educated because you feel like you're not enough as a homeschool teacher. There's so much noise, so much loudness. And you compare, by the way, a calm day and a windy day, there's no comparison. A calm day, there's hardly any noise at all. A hushed breeze. Flat water makes no sound. It's the waves crashing that are noisy. A strong wind will rustle every leaf against you and seem to fix its mark directly on you. And who hasn't been out there on a cold day when the winds are blowing thinking the winds are right at them? Coming against them so strong, and it's loud, and you hear it going through all of the branches, the howling of the wind. That's what problems are like. See, good days we don't have problems. Those are quiet days. But man, why is it the problems are so loud and so noisy? Sometimes defy everything that we believe. So you got a storm in your soul right now. You got a lot of wind going on. Stand next to Jesus and let Him still it. He's the one that stills the storms. He says that He can give us, it says in the Bible that Jesus Christ will give us a peace that passes all understanding as we bring our problems to Him. We just have to pray with gratitude in our hearts, and we come before God. So think about it. How much noise is there right now? And is that disturbing our peace? Is it wrecking our peace? Because we got to face that. We got to understand, the giant's down there crying out, but it doesn't matter what the giant says, because that doesn't mean what God's will. The giant does not determine God's will for Israel. The giant does not determine God's will for David. It's just noise. That's all it is. He's just down there basically bellowing away. He's down there being boisterous. It's not going to end up meaning a thing, because David's still going to go down and take him out. Noise, noise, noise. How much noise has there been about coronavirus? How many doomsday stories? And now here's what you hear about. Now we hear about murder hornets. How fun is that? There's stories out there about, now kids are getting something affected. It's not really affected to coronavirus. It kind of is with coronavirus, and there's and they're getting rashes and so on and so forth. And there's maybe 150 cases in the whole world. And everyone's now starting to think, see, that's going to happen to my kid. And noise, 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 rattling us. We've got to face that. And we also face gigantic uncertainty in verse 16. It says, for 40 days the Philistine came forward every morning and every evening and took his stand. He says it's every day for 40 days. We just went through Lent. Remember what that felt like, right? 40 days. 40 days, that's a lot of days of sitting there defying God. A lot of days of, and Saul, every time he hears the voice, he's dismayed. And his men are terrified. Every time. This is going on. Here's what I would be wondering about, honestly. When will this end? And how will it end? It's uncertain, and they don't have an answer. And a lot of times, that's right where we're at. We are uncertain. And we are in uncertain times. And this is why you need faith. And we need faith in God because of the great uncertainty that we face. Now, in Ohio, they just cut the budget by $800 million because when you lop off your economy for 2 months, that's the kind of stuff that happens, because when businesses aren't working, they're not generating income. When they're not generating an income, they're not generating anything to be taxed. And when there are no taxes going to the state, there's budget shortfalls. And in this case, $800 million in just a few months. And so the state has cut back $300 million to schools and $100 million to colleges and a couple $1 million to, let's say, welfare, social services, things like that. There's some scared people because they don't know what's going to happen. Is that going to affect my job? What's going to happen in the fall? We talk about the fall when schools go back. Kids going? Will they go just 2 days? Will it be normal? What's going to happen? I don't know. You don't know. There was an article in a newspaper in Dayton, and it said Ohio's monthly budget report is nothing but terrible news. Many indicators being the lowest that they've been in generations. 1 million Ohioans have filed for jobless benefits. Just 60.2% of Americans are participating in the labor pool. That's the lowest since 1973. The employment to population ratio fell to 51.3%, the lowest since 1948. The number of hours worked fell by nearly 15% in April, the biggest monthly drop of this level since 1964. Tobacco revenues are $14 million higher than estimates. The only part of Ohio's budget to be in the black is tobacco revenues. And I would have to imagine that everyone's so nervous they went back to smoking, or they're smoking more, because that's the only thing black in the entire state is the tobacco revenues. Man, what are we hearing? What are we hearing in these things? Man, this is tough. This is going to affect lives. Less money, less jobs, less money floating around in the economy. The trickle-down effect is phenomenal. My twin brother, I was talking to him. He has a wedding venue business, and he's already lost $58,000. It's probably going to get worse, and that's money that will not be recouped in 2020. Because all these weekends where brides were getting married, and now they're canceling to have the wedding at his place. Yeah, they'll move it to 2021. Hopefully he'll be able to do it then. But for this year, there's no recouping it. And guess what? That money, that means that's not going to go down the supply chain. It's not going to be buying things. It's not going to be improving his property. It's not going to be. There's thousands upon thousands of people just like him in all the states across the United States. This is a time of uncertainty because we don't know what the effect's going to be. We don't know what it's going to look like 2 months down the road. We don't know what it means. Well, we know this. that even though it's uncertain, doesn't mean God's gone anywhere. Doesn't mean he's not there. This giant's there for 40 days, but God still has a solution in the name of man, David. God still raised up this shepherd boy to come here and do something about this giant. God's still going to deliver these people, right? And so I look at our situation, yeah, we might face giants, but God's still bigger than the giant. And our faith can still remain strong because we've got to be bold in what it is we truly believe. So old news, economic and the financial stories, they're creating uncertainty. You guys are going to be so sorry, and you're opening up the economy, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. We're inundated with negative news every day, multiple times throughout the day. Constant negativity, 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 negativity. Faith is not listening to that. Faith is not paying attention to that. Faith is stronger. In fact, faith, the second main thing, it ignores naysayers. And I love, by the way, in verse 32, David says, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him. Don't lose heart. Don't let your heart fail, David says. To a king. David, young man, says to the king, don't let your heart fail. Don't come apart. And here's what David, as he's thinking about going down to face this giant, here's what he's hearing. He's hearing all the naysayers. His brother tells him in verse 28, when Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men, he burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here, and with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. You're just a shepherd kid. You're just a shepherd of a handful of sheep. You got a wicked heart. I know you. You're not good enough. You think you're a bigger deal. You don't belong here. You're inadequate. How many times do we hear words like this? How many times maybe do we say it to our own self? I'm not good enough. I can't do this job that God's assigned me to. I'm not worthy of this ministry. Maybe I'm not worthy of the blessings that I have. I don't measure up. Some people tell you you'll never be free. But you got to know this. Eliab states an opinion, but it's not the fact. People say a lot of things. Just because people say things doesn't mean what they're saying is true. And I don't care, that could be the government, that could be the news media, that could be a friend. Just because somebody's talking doesn't mean they're talking the truth. Eliab says these things about David. He's completely wrong, and his words will not impact the outcome of this battle between David and Goliath, because David chooses not to allow those words to impact him. He doesn't listen to his brother. He goes and faces the giant anyway. And we've got to listen to God's direction and not the naysayers, because people telling you that you cannot accomplish something does not, in fact, mean that you cannot accomplish it. And then look at what King Saul says to him in verse 33. Saul replied, you're not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You're only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. You are not able. You're too young. You're not experienced enough. You're going up against a champion. They're stronger. And again, the words are only relevant if you're looking at a man and not God. Yeah, I mean, what Saul's saying is, sure, you're right. This guy's experienced. David's youthful. He's been a warrior. David's not a warrior. You are not able. From human perspective, you're not able to do it. But that's what makes His power so beautiful in our lives. Because we can do things that we wouldn't be able to do on our own. Whether to overcome addiction, to overcome anger, to overcome immorality and drunkenness and other problems and despair and depression and whatever kind of giant it is we face. It's not about us being stronger. It's about God being stronger. So I love it, man. You can't listen to what people are going to say. I've heard all the naysaying in my life. You're not a natural preacher. Eagleville Bible Church will never grow. And then it would grow. And the same pastor told me it would never grow. He said, okay, well, you proved me wrong. And it's grown more than I thought it would. But you'll never go any further than where you are right now. It's not possible. It's not possible, Bill, for that church to grow. It can't happen. What are they looking at? Is that because you're looking at me? You're looking at a white building with an outhouse out back? Is that all you were looking at? Because while you're all looking at that, we're all looking at God. And we're all saying, no, God can do great things here. And God can move in this area. Our faith is in the Lord. Our faith is not just in our own supply and our own money and our own strength. It's in the Lord. So you can't look at a person without understanding the God factor. Now, we have a couple pastors in our church who came out of the secular world. Mark was, in fact, a truck driver not all that long ago. Steve Arslick was in the chemical field, working at a chemical plant, really not all that long ago. You can't tell me these men are not great pastors, because they are great pastors. See, it's not about the man, it's about God in the man. It's not about the woman, it's about God in the woman. That's what makes the difference. And that's why you can never listen to a naysayer. You can never listen to someone that tells you you'll never amount to anything, you'll never accomplish anything, and you'll never overcome whatever it is you need to overcome. Because all they're talking about is you. They've forgotten all about God. Because when God is in the equation, that's when great things will happen. And faith ignores these naysayers. And faith also believes in deliverance. I mean, just believe straight out. God can deliver. And by the way, if you do not understand that God rescues people, you don't understand God very well. If you don't understand that God at nature and at the core of who he is one who delivers, man, then we're certainly short-selling God. It says in verses 34 through 37, and we find there these words. But David said to Saul, your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. So when he's told he can't do it. This is what David's told. You can't do it, you're not able. Here's David's response. Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, I struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Now, I want to note something here. David is not saying, look at me, I'm so special. And I'm so skilled and I'm such a natural warrior, natural fighter that I killed the bear and I killed the lion and I'm going to go out and kill this Philistine. He's saying this, God rescued me. God rescued me from that lion. It was God. It wasn't just me. It was God with me. And God rescued me from that bear. And God's going to rescue me from this giant. He's going to do it. Right? God is the one who rescues me. And I love the fact that he gives God the credit. And to rescue means to snatch out or snatch away, to deliver. And we see that God gives us extra help. Now, look at times when God has been there for you. Look at times when God has already rescued you. Sometimes when in our faith, we need to look back at times and see what God has already done. See a prayer that God has already answered, a time when it seemed like we weren't going to make it. Either we didn't have enough strength, we didn't have enough finances, whatever it was, and we still made it. And there have been plenty of times in our lives where we didn't think we were going to make it, but we did. And we didn't know how we'd accomplish something, but we did. And why did we do it? Because God was with us. And one of the things I was fortunate enough to see when I was young, a child growing up, is my dad went to Bible college, studied to be a minister. He's the main breadwinner. Now the whole family's out there scrambling to make money, and we're putting everything together. We're still under the poverty line, and it's rough. And so one day, a man from the courthouse in our county called my dad and said, hey, your house got sold today because you're back on your taxes, and apparently they just had to put a number, like let's say 3 notifications in the paper that they're going to sell your house, and if you didn't happen to see those notifications, I'm sure in the fine print right in the newspaper, which my dad was way too busy to be paying attention to, he had no idea it was even going on. He didn't even know it was a possibility. He didn't even know it was on the radar. And so this guy said, yeah, they sold your house today. That'd be shocking news, to be honest with you, that, your house just got sold. Where are we going to live? What's going to happen to my family, right? Well, anyway, the guy goes, let me go double check. So he comes back to my dad on the phone and said, hey, you're never going to believe it. He said, somehow your file got left behind on the desk. And they didn't take it. It was in the pile to go to be sold today, but it accidentally got left behind. And my dad got the money together and got those taxes paid, and we had our house. And I heard those stories. I saw how God came through and provided. Were times where we didn't have enough to make ends meet. And I saw how God orchestrated those things. So I go to college with no money. You think I'm worried? You think I'm worried in the future going out with less? I'm not worried. I already saw the bear. I already saw the lion. I already saw what God did. I already saw how God could take care of you. And so when we've seen these things in our lives, we need to trust God because of our past experiences. And we need to trust that God delivers because he is a deliverer. God delivered Israel from Egypt. He delivered Daniel from the mouth of the lions. Jesus Christ was sent to deliver us from sin because it says in the Bible that all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God. We all have this fatal malady of sin in our lives that's affected every single one of us, and we need snatched from this eternal death. What did I say before? If you don't understand God's a rescuer, you're not going to understand his work in this world very well. He sent his own son on a rescue mission. Jesus' name comes from Joshua, which means deliverer. He's the deliverer, even by name. He's the rescuer of sin. And I love the fact that Jesus Christ can give me a home in heaven and save me from all of my sins. He came because you know what Jesus Christ did? He wrecked sin and death. He destroyed them with a cross. That was his weapon. He took the cross and he killed those. That's such an amazing thing. I remember when I was working on a maintenance crew, and there was a man standing behind me, and I was working away, and he's making fun of me for being a Christian, and he's just, he's getting ornery. We were working a lot of overtime every day in a row. There's a big thing going on at work, and so everyone's getting a little bit testy, I guess, but he's standing behind me, and he's like, choo-choo, hey, Bill, how can I get a ticket on the express train going to hell? I turned around, and I looked at him, and I said, you're asking the wrong question. The question is not, how do I get a ticket on the train to hell? The question should be, how do I get off the train since we're already on it? Every person, because they're a sinner, they're already on that train. Jesus Christ came to get us off the train. He came to rescue us from that. And see, if I don't understand that it's nothing I have to do to get there, I'm already going there. If I want to get to heaven, that takes a rescue. That takes someone snatching me from the paws of death, right from the jaws of it. He snatches me out through his work on the cross. And he saves me through faith in him. And I need to believe that God rescues. That's part of my faith. That's a big part of my faith. God rescues. God saves. God delivers. He delivers me from sin. He delivers me from hell. He delivers me from problems. God delivers me. I believe that. I believe that. Do you believe that today? Do you believe that? God rescues. God delivers. It's awesome. That's a huge part of my faith. So faith faces the giants. It's not going to listen to naysayers. And it's going to understand that God is a deliverer. It believes in that. So we can have, the fourth thing, our faith boasts in God. Because we can be ultra confident. In verse 40, it says, then he took off his staff. He took his staff. So there's David now. He's going to face the giant. He's got a staff in his hand. He chose 5 smooth stones in the stream, and he put them in the pouch of a shepherd's bag. And with a sling in his hand, he approached the Philistine. Because God has equipped this man for this mission. Now this kid, he's been a shepherd. He has seen the bear. He has seen the lion. He knows how to sling a rock. Now, he can't put on Saul's armor. He's not even big enough to wear it. It's not going to help him. He doesn't have a sword in his hand. He doesn't have a spear. He has what? With a shepherd's staff and with a sling, with the tools of a shepherd, he goes out and kills that giant. And I look at how, okay, he's obviously nimble. He's accurate and he's dangerous. He had a job of shepherding, and it wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a glamorous job. But God took him in a not glamorous job and prepared him for this day. Prepared him for Goliath. Prepared him even to write the 23rd Psalm, which is one of the most beloved passages in the Bible. He prepared him as a shepherd to write that phenomenal psalm. He prepared him to be a king. And sometimes we're in a simple job, and we think, man, this job, it's kind of like, it's not glamorous. Now, it may not be glamorous, but it could be preparing you to do exactly what it is God needs you to do in the future. Because God is taking all these experiences that we have, and he's preparing us. And when David encountered that lion and bear, I bet it was scary. And I bet maybe he wondered, why did God allow this? Well, because God was preparing him. God was building David for the future. God was building this man to do a job for him. And we face issues, and we've got to realize those issues prepare us. And some of the lions that we face and the bears that we face get us ready to face the giants that we face, and to make us ready and to equip us to be the perfect tool in God's hand. That's what I believe. I believe that our boast is in God, and he's doing things with us. He's preparing us. And we have God on our side. David said to the Philistine, you come against me with sword and spear and javelin. I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty and the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. And he said, I come to you in the name of the God. I'm in his name. He's with me. Yeah, you got a spear, and you've got a sword, and you got a javelin. That's nothing compared to what I have. Because what I have is God. So what giants do we face? Health issues, potential job losses, cut in pay, some other type of issue in our lives, maybe a relational issue. Just remember, you've got God on your side. And so when we're coming in, we need to pray as we're coming into battle. And along the way, we need to remember we need God. And we don't want to be so arrogant that we think that we can do everything without God's help. I mean, David realized when he went into this battle, he went with God. And God was there. He was there in God's name. He was there with the Lord of the armies was with him. He knew it. He believed it. Man, I don't want you guys going into a time of temptation without the Lord on your side, or into a test without the Lord on the side, or into an interview without the Lord on your side, or into any situation without the Lord on your side, right? We can't be so arrogant that we're just going to march out there, face the giants of life, and think, I don't need God. No, of course we need God. We desperately need God. We're built to need God. And so we realize that, no, we've got God, and he's more powerful than our problems because he's the God of the armies. I mean, Goliath's like a $100 bill. God's like a bank. He's like a vault full of $100 bills. The Goliath, he's one giant. God represents armies. One giant can't withstand armies is not even close. And so I look at it and say, man, God, you're so awesome. You're so powerful. You're bigger than any issue that we face. And we're told in Ephesians 6:10, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Because that's where your strength comes from. And I want you to know that today when our faith boasts in God. You're not boasting in you. You're boasting in God. You're saying, God, I believe in you. Let that be your boast. God, I believe in you. God, I trust in you. And then talk about what God will do. I love what he says. This day, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day, I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. I'm going to tell you right now what God's going to do. And again, he's not taking any credit for this. This is what God's going to do, not what I'm going to do. That's a big mistake when we're talking about what I'm going to do. Forget what you're going to do. What is God going to do? That's our boast. God, what are you going to do? And can we say that, God, I believe you're going to protect me. God, I believe you're going to help me. God, I believe you're going to get through. Man, the world's going to know there's a God because, God, you're going to be with me and you're going to go with me and you're going to help me. He tells them, I'm cutting off your head and turning you into bird food. Wild animals are going to chew on you. Man, that's a boasting God. I'm going to tell you what God's going to do. And what's going to happen right now because of God's power. And I love it, man. That should be our prayer. God, here's what I'm counting on you to do. And Lord, that the world will know that there's a God, because that's what it's about. The world doesn't need to know about you. The world needs to know about God. We don't need to know about you. We need to know about Jesus. That's what the world needs to know. And the whole purpose and the whole plan of David going out there is not for his own credit. It is not for his own glory. He's going out there to face the giant so the world will know there's a God. Can you see it? Can you see his whole life? What's his life about? What was it really about for him? It's about God. It's about people knowing there's a God. Why is he so upset about the giant? Because he's defying God. And he goes, I want people to know that God's real in my life. And that's going to show up in your faith. I can't think of a bigger place where your belief in God is going to show up than in faith. And if we're all cowering and we're all scared and we're all worried all the time, and man, what are we saying to the world? What are we saying to the world? We have a powerful God. And we give it over to him because in verse 47, all those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or by spear that the Lord saves, For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into our hands. It's God that gives the victory. The battle is the Lord's. The battles that we face belong to God. They don't belong to us. It's not for us to fret about. It's not for us to worry about. We're told in the Bible to cast all of our cares, all of our anxiety upon God. Why? Because God cares for you. That's 1 Peter 5:7. Cast your anxieties and give them to God. Give your battles to God. Give your hurts to God. Come to God. Come to God. And maybe that's what you need to get out of this whole sermon right here, is just come to God and learn to give stuff over to Him, because that's what faith does. Faith understands the battle. It's not up to me. It's not about my strength. It's not about my smarts. It's not about what I'm capable of doing. It's about what God is capable of doing through you. That's what this is about. And David could see that even though that giant, everyone else was scared of him, David saw the world in a different way. He saw the world as a world that God controls. He saw battles as belonging to the Lord. He saw God as a difference maker. He knew he wasn't a difference maker. He's going to take out the giant with a stone. Not about him. It's about God. And even God provides. And one thing you got to realize, God provides for the battles you face. He didn't go there with a sword, but he cut off the giant's head with a sword. Where did he get that sword? Straight off the giant. He took Goliath's own sword and took his head off with it. His own sword. God even provided in the battle. David didn't even have to worry about having a sword and what he was going to do when the giant fell down, because God already had that figured out. Do you trust God this much? Do you guys hear what I'm saying today? Do you trust God this much that your boast is in the Lord? You trust Him for your deliverance? You're not listening to naysayers? You know you've got a God who delivers? You can face any giant? Is that the kind of faith you have? Because that's the kind of faith David had, and why he was such a difference maker. Verses 48 to 50, the Philistine moved closer to attack, and David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. And reaching into his bag, taking out a stone, he slung it, and it struck the Philistine on the forehead, and the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. Without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. There it is. A sling and a stone. He didn't even have a sword in his hand. He didn't have a spear. He didn't have anything the world thought he needed to have. He just went out and took him out with a stone. No one saw this coming. No one understood what God was about to do through David. They didn't even see it coming. And David went out there with such boldness and such power because he believed in God that much. And my encouragement to you is, may we have this kind of faith. May God be leading you in this kind of way. And my prayer is that God is speaking to your heart. And maybe today you need to come to God and realize, God, I need delivered. I need my soul saved. I need a home in heaven. I need my sins forgiven. Trust in Jesus Christ who did it for you on the cross. Maybe you have financial shortfalls. Trust in God. You might have some hurts. Trust in God. Trust in God. Don't try to go with the weapons of the world. What is God saying to you? Faith is the greatest asset that we have, clearly, is faith. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for all those who are listening and will be tuning into the sermon. I pray that you would use it mightily in their hearts. I pray that you would be calling people unto yourself. And God, even my own heart, my own life, I want to remember this daily in my battles. It's not about me figuring stuff out. It's about you. I need to trust you. I need to be coming to you. You're the deliverer, God. I can't deliver somebody. I can't make a difference. You're the one that makes the difference, God. And may you receive all the glory and the power, and for all the things that we're able to accomplish as a church. I pray the glory would be yours. All the power, it's about your great name, God. It's about your great name. And we thank you, God, for your great name. You're an awesome God, and we praise you this day. And we praise you in the name of your awesome Son, in the name of Jesus Christ.